Now let's get on to the most important part of any corporate tax regime, which is calculation of tax liability. At the end of the day, the purpose of tax regime is that businesses pay a fair share of their taxes, which can be used for the development of the country, of the economy. And therefore, it is very, very important that the tax liability which is calculated is correct. If the tax liability which is calculated is not correct, it will result in an assessment. I mean, it may result in an assessment. And if it is found that the amount which has been paid is different from what is due from a business, the chances of suffering a penalty or interest, or actually both of them, are very, very high. So let's look at what does the draft public consultation document says about the calculation of tax liability. So according to the draft law, the rate of tax applicable on taxable income up to AED 375,000 dirhams is 0%. So practically, if you have an income which is taxable, not the non-taxable part, if your taxable income is up to AED 375,000 dirhams, the tax is 0. So let's say, for example, simply speaking, if the income is 300,000 dirhams, the tax is 0%. If let's say someone has a tax-free or an exempt income of 1 million dirhams, plus he has taxable income of 300,000 dirhams, even in that case, because the taxable income is less than 375,000 dirhams, the tax payable will be 0. However, if the tax-free income is 300,000, but the taxable income is 1 million dirham, in that particular case, the tax liability will be based on what? It will be 1 million dirhams less 375,000. And on the balance 625,000 dirhams, tax will be payable at the rate of 9%. This is something which is not covered under the draft public consultation document as of now. But basically, in the initial announcement that was made, there was a mention that the Pillar 2 companies, these basically refer to large multinational corporations, which are covered under the Pillar 2 of Base Erosion and Profit Shifting Project of OECD, who actually are covered under the Global Minimum Tax Regime. They may have a different tax rate. So under the Global Minimum Tax Regime, the tax rate which was prescribed was around 15%. Now, what this tax rate will be, how this will be calculated is something for which not much of guidance is available in the current public consultation document. But the important point is that the withholding tax is going to be 0% for all payments to resident as well as to non-resident. And the intention of the government is to keep the compliances simple for smaller businesses, because the government understands that small business may not have too much of a profitability. And if that is not very, very high, spending too much money on the tax compliance would be difficult for them. Therefore, the intention behind the UAE current corporate tax regime is that it has to be simple for smaller business, and it should not cost them financially a very, very high amount that is disproportionate to their income. Moving on to the next slide, let's look at one of the examples. So here we have a company which is based in mainland, and it has a trading income of 200,000 dirhams. For mainland entity, there is no exemption. So this income will be completely taxable for them. They have service income of 500,000. Again, no exemption available. If there are any specific exemption that comes in, then that is something we are going to discuss maybe once those are announced. And it has other income of 275,000, which is again not exempt from tax. So the total taxable income here comes to 975,000 dirhams. Out of this, there's an exemption of 375,000 dirhams. So the total taxable income of the company becomes 975,000 less 375. Since the tax rate is 9% of the taxable income, the total tax payable by this entity will be 54,000 dirhams. This is a very, very simple example. Once the law is introduced and more provisions kick in, we would be having a better idea in terms of how the deduction, etc., are to be. Thanks for watching this video on UAE corporate tax. If you want to get more such videos with a lot of practical insights that will help you deal with the UAE corporate tax, you can subscribe to our course, whose link is given in the description below. We will be discussing various developments that happen in the UAE corporate tax in this particular course, as well as for the next 12 months. And whatever questions you have, we will be conducting live sessions for queries, etc. for the registered users. So in case that is something for interest for you, do join us at the link given in the description below.